On this episode of AV Week, repurposing rental staging gear to help dealers and also help live events workers who have been impacted. Cisco takes a look at the as-a-service model and when and how the AV industry will recover after COVID. All that and more. Next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 470, recorded Friday, August 21st, 2020. Nothing new.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Kramer, AV Beyond the Box, and by
Draper, focused on innovative solutions.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio, visual news, and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week, first and foremost, you know him as Brock McGinnis from AVTOS. Welcome, sir.
Hello, Tim. Good to be here.
Thank you, sir. Only way I can see Brock, because he's up in Toronto, and neither of us can cross at least the Canadian-U.S. border. Brock can go anywhere in the world he wants, but us big dumb Americans can't. Kelly Perkins is a fantastic marketing person and does all kinds of really cool social media, including our social media. So thank you, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for that awesome intro. I appreciate it. I'm now blushing.
No, don't blush. And last but not least, a young man that I got a chance to meet this week happens to be our buddy David Danto's new boss. His name is Darius Jones from Poly. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me. Really excited.
Absolutely. Thank you. And if you get a chance, check out the big crossover event that we at AVNation did along with Mr. Danto and Poly and a bunch of other folks, the AV Jam guys. Mr. Netta was there. Neil from Poly over in the UK was there. It'll be posted on our site. It'll be posted on Let's Do Videos site with Mr. Maldo. And even think the UK, the AV Jam guys' site. So check it out. 2 hours. Darius was on a panel along with Zoom. And then I got a chance to do a panel with a bunch of really smart consultants and industry analysts. And then Chris tried to moderate the rest of us yahoos. So, which was interesting. So anyhow, first story comes to us actually from our friends over at AV Network, SCN. AVIXA has released a new report looking at both the sales index as well as the employment index coming out of 2021 and coming out of 2020 and going into 2021. According to the report, quote unquote, sales index reached 53.7. This represents an increase of 3 points from June, indicating that mark was at 50 points, which is actually even higher than what had happened in April and May. According to AVIXA and according to the report, they are forecasting that even though there was a dip in the March, April, May timeframe, it is trending up, and most likely both employment as well as AV sales will recover sometime in 2021, possibly as late as 2022. Mr. McGinnis, we'll start with you. You've been around this industry a long time. You've seen your fair share of setbacks and downturns. What do you think? What is your forecast based on your clients, the integrators, but also the folks that you're talking to?
I'm very conservative about forecasting, Tim. I don't think that a month ago or 2 months ago or 3 months ago we had any idea that there would be, more than 5 million coronavirus cases in the U.S., that more than 170,000 people would have passed because of it, and that coming into September, we still wouldn't know if it was safe to send kids back to school, and so the unknowns about when people will fully return to offices, fully return to manufacturing production facilities, are still there, and I think that the AV industry got busy because as we came into the summer because of pent-up demand. There were, projects that were stalled and needed to be completed. This is all stuff that was already in the pipeline. And I'm concerned that new pipeline activity is not really starting, at least on the construction side. Maybe we don't feel those effects until late 2021 or 2022. But I am in the no growth or contraction camp at this point.
So is this little bump that we're seeing? Is it an anomaly? Is it just kind of a bump up? In other words, in a road, and it's going to go back down?
Well, the statistics are already out of date.
Okay.
They were likely collected 6 weeks ago. At this point, I think they were talking even about early June kind of indicators, and we've all, I think, firmly believed that this coronavirus thing was just going to go away, and it was going to fold its tent and back up, and everything was going to be okay. And the longer that we persist into this current business climate, where a lot of industries are still really just treading water and trying to keep their nose above level, the more uncertainty it causes. Uncertainty stops businesses from making plans. And while there's going to be a ton of activity, in the Toronto large employer market, for example, people are not returning to high-rise office buildings at this point until 2021, January 2021. And the 20 largest employers in Toronto, which is the third or fourth largest metropolitan area in North America, have all committed to keeping people home, keep the number of people on transit down, minimize circulation, and as a result, minimize risk of community spread. And there's going to be a lot of work, when those people do return to those offices, reconfiguring and adapting to new styles and ways of working together safely and collaborating in person safely, which of course we all want to do. But I'm not looking for us to get back to previous levels, and particularly, the skyrocketing growth that our industry has enjoyed for the last decade. I think that at best we can hope for plateau, at least until the world feels safe again.
All right. Kelly, same kind of question. Kelly works with a lot of manufacturers, but also manufacturers reps. So both from a regional standpoint as well as a national standpoint, what are you seeing?
I mean, I guess on the manufacturer side, I guess it depends on what you manufacture, like USB cameras, headsets, video conferencing type, stuff. It's
all good.
Yeah, I think it's great. Things are going great for those guys. I work with a couple integration firms across the country and even one up in Canada, and, they seem to be doing all right. But I think, it could be like what Brock said, it's in the funnel, but or it's been in the pipeline for a while. I think everybody scrambling to go back to school has been a big opportunity for the integration firms, because teachers, school districts, I mean, you talk to anybody that works in education and it's different everywhere. Nobody knows what they're doing. So they're looking to other people for help. I hear a lot of really positive comments from people, but for every 5 positive comments, then I get another phone call of, we had to lay X amount of people off, or we're not going into the office till 2021, or we can't participate in this or do that because we don't have enough cash on hand, or so-and-so is looking for a job, and then there's that piece of it. But then, you have to remember the whole live production side of stuff too. I mean, is that included in this as well?
I can't imagine that it is. No.
So, I mean, it just really depends on who you're talking to. I think, being conservative, I mean, I'm scared. I think a lot of people are. And, but I try and take it day by day and be happy that I still have work and that my customers are still getting work in the door. But I don't know how, like Brock said, if this is 6 weeks old, I don't even know how we can forecast, because we don't even know what's happening next month.
Yeah. Darius, to give folks a little bit closer statistics, last week the U.S. government announced that jobless claims did crest over 1 million again. It had gone under 1 million for about a week or so, but it is over 1 million now. when you're looking at this and you're talking to your customers, and Poly does make a lot of those, we were somewhat commenting about the fact that if you sell USB cameras, things are going well. However, you still have customers and you still have dealers that are looking at, as Brock said, not going back to work, not going back to the office, or maybe their customers aren't. So when you're looking at this and you guys are forecasting, what are you looking at, and what are some of the metrics that you guys are using to say, this may not hit, it may not recover until the middle of next year or whenever you guys think it is. But what are the metrics that you're really looking at?
Yeah. So, 1/3 of the team that I represent is the strategy team. So very much, in their center court. And, I listen to Kelly. I think everyone's scared, right? When you talk to customers, this is an unprecedented event. And I think I have to throw a dime in the cuss jar because everyone's used that word so much. But it truly is, right? 2020 as a year is an anomaly. So we would normally look at unemployment figures. We would normally look at real estate figures. We would look at a variety of things in this portfolio of kind of a market view that says what's going to grow, what might contract. And I think all bets are off, right? If anyone said that we would be dealing with fires, a pandemic, an oddly formulated election, and a variety of other things that are going on in 2020, I think we need a comet and aliens to visit, and then we have the perfect formula. So we've decided to just look at what's customer demand. We're intimately involved with a lot of large organizations planning, and all things that Brock and Kelly said are true. What we're noticing though is that demand's not going away. It's kind of moving around the portfolio in kind of nebulous ways. So, a customer who was planning a phone rollout is now planning a headset rollout to support a UC, deployment. A customer who was planning on an open office deployment is looking at hybrid working and is saying, hey, people aren't going to come into the office just to meet. People are going to come into the office because they have something to do, which may include meeting, and that open office now becomes a huddle room of one, right? And so I think the demand is going to still be there. It's about creatively meeting that demand and having the flexibility to move throughout the customer demand segments from USB kind of personal devices all the way up to room systems that are probably going to serve a slightly different purpose. That's kind of how we're looking at the opportunity. The traditional demand signals are there, but I'm not sure that those demand signals are extremely accurate at this point.
All right, very good. Next story comes to us from our friends over at Commercial Integrator, taking a look at Cisco's, I'm sorry, not Commercial Integrator, good Lord, Innovate on the Neck. Taking a look at Cisco's yearly budget in their financial year. Cisco CEO Chuck Robbins is considering a quote-unquote transition to focus on new areas amid a decrease in profits of 5% in the 2020 fiscal year that just ended for them. They're rebalancing and looking into more R&D investments to focus on new areas, including a possible as-a-service model. Kelly, we'll start with you on this. AV as a service, hardware as a service, stuff as a service in general is something that the AV industry has debated for, I'm going to guess, about 5 or 6 years. Brock will eventually correct me on that if I'm wrong. You've got our buddy Joe Way, who has made a T-shirt that says AV as a service must die or is wrong or something like that. However, though, that young man has now signed an AV as a service contract. I want to point that out there for USC. So Joe at least has come around. When you're looking at this from both a marketing standpoint, but also somebody who used to work in manufacturing, they're trying, and Cisco possibly will be trying to educate their dealers and also the end users into this model. How difficult is that to get, I guess, first the integrators to understand this model of, you're not only selling, hardware boxes now with a margin, you're now selling a service along with that?
Well, I think it's going to have to turn to as a service. And I think now is probably the best time to start looking at that, because people don't have large amounts of cash sitting around for giant projects, right? So how about we take, and it offers the flexibility too, right? So let's say you sign you know, whatever the typical, you know, subscription or contract is, you know, you could say, okay, we'll sign it for 3 months and then we'll relook at it and say, is this working for us? Do we need to adjust? Do we need to shift? And it gives the end user customers the option and the capability to not have to invest a large amount of money for like a permanent installation that might change again, because there's so much unknown and so much uncertainty and things can change very quickly. To me, it seems like a no-brainer for an end user to look at leasing or renting equipment or just renting as a service.
Yeah. Darius, same kind of question here as a manufacturer. I'm not going to ask if you guys are rolling out one, but there are certain products and devices, both from the Poly system, but also in UC in general, that would make sense, especially as we were talking about in the previous story. Folks are trying to kind of reconfigure their workspace and take those former huddle spaces that were 2 and 3 folks rooms and then trying to reconfigure those. How do we get both kind of the manufacturing community as well as the consultant and the integrator community to kind of wrap their heads around this and educate each other, but also take that education amongst ourselves and come with a good story, I guess, or a good program for end users and education and technology managers?
Absolutely. It's about looking at the past, right? When I first started at Poly, one of the first comments I made was, as a previous customer across a variety of technologies, as a service is nothing new, right? Networks as a service, have been around for decades. That was the original as a service. You bought a phone from AT&T, not. All right, you bought service, it came with a phone. Matter of fact, you couldn't even plug another telephone into the network until 1984, I think, right? And then, so network as a service, compute as a service, collaboration as a service, now contact center as a service. People are used to the acquisition model, and there's some really fundamental business models that already exist. It's not a lather, rinse, and repeat. When you think of hardware being deployed and the capital outlay that a manufacturer, a provider, or an installer has to put a monthly service together, it's no trivial task, but the business models have existed throughout time. And so, I know you didn't ask the question, but we've obviously not just been playing around with hardware as a service. We actually have motions in place. We have one that was announced with Zoom, the Studio X, VVXs, and a couple of other devices like the Trio are in there. We've also done this with contact centers. And what this allows people to do, whether it's the customer point of view of being able to try something at scale with minimal capital outlay, or the installer being able to get involved and bring, a variety of services to life up front versus having to kind of knit things together on these shoestring budgets. I really think there is an opportunity across the ecosystem, whether it's the as a service providers, the traditional guys like Zoom and Five9 who are doing it from a service perspective, or the installers and integrators. There's an opportunity for everyone to kind of get benefits here. It starts with a customer first mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And another one of the service providers that you guys are partnering with is also Midwich globally, but also Starin here locally in the States. So that's kind of neat. I want to point something out here though. And Darius, you hit something that I had never thought of. And as a kid who grew up in the 70s and 80s, I grew up with the AT&T model. Never occurred to me. You were the first person that ever pointed out to me the fact that was not the original hardware as a service model. But you're right. You couldn't plug in anything. You had to buy the phone from AT&T. It was a court case that allowed others to go on there. And you got the service and the hardware from them. So you're right. The folks that are saying that hardware and software as a service is a new thing. So, yeah. All right, Mr. McGinnis, not for nothing, but your company is called Avitas, which is AVIT as a service. So hit me here. As consultants, as integrators, and also as AV pros, how do we move this forward and leverage things that Darius and Poly is doing, and leverage things that Cisco is possibly looking at?
it's a unique time in history, and we're seeing pretty much everything in our lives descending down Maslow's hierarchy of needs, from things you want to things you need. Well, if people are going to be able to, if companies are going to be able to afford to give their employees the level of technology that they need to do their jobs, they're likely going to have to do it on an as-a-service model. I really believe that COVID and the impact that it's had on the economy and on corporate coffers is going to drive adoption, and not just of a leasing thing, but corporations are going to be looking to shed overhead. A lot of the people that were furloughed are not going to be invited back. Everybody's going to have to try and do more with less. The economy's done wonderful things for almost a decade now, and businesses and business processes have gotten fat. I can't tell you the number of times, just in the last 2 weeks, I've heard about companies having to go through 6 meetings in order to get a simple directive approved. 6 levels of meetings. Well, we can't afford to do that anymore. People are not going to have the time, they're not going to have the people, they're not going to have the money, and so technology is going to take that over. If there's not cash for technology, and if there aren't people on staff that otherwise would be supporting that technology, then it becomes as a service. It's a good time for that. And we saw it first in the IT industry. People couldn't afford to have the expertise on staff as networks and software became more and more complex. And so they outsourced it and had business process management and people management within IT departments, but a lot of the intellectual, same thing is likely going to evolve. And I'm sure you're already starting to hear about some of the tech managers and AV support staff at larger corporations being furloughed indefinitely as their companies kind of look to pare overhead, pare expenses, and hunker down because winter is coming. So, but technology is going to be critical, and if manufacturers like Poly and Cisco come to the table with some of that financing because they have the resources, and they can tap into their capital pools and their bankers to assist integrators who don't necessarily have the same depth of financing capabilities behind them, and you combine some vendor financing with some term financing at the customer end, it's going to be a win-win situation. And as Kelly pointed out, integrators that are poised to become services businesses are the ones that are going to win long term.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, last story here. This one comes to us from our buddies over at Commercial Integrator. D&B Audio Technic announced a new certified pre-owned program offering customers the chance to purchase remanufactured D&B systems. As part of the D&B remanufacturing process, each system goes through an exterior mechanical and acoustic check. The exterior check includes a full system inspection to confirm there's no damage. All foam and seals are replaced, and the exterior is repainted with the original D&B top coat. These devices are coming off of rental and staging gears, and that's why I wanted to bring this up. Kelly mentioned the fact that certain employment numbers don't include our brothers and sisters that are in the rental and staging industry, and they're right. But this is a way for those companies and those employees to start getting a little bit of relief. They're able to bring their systems off of the truck, out of the rack, and at least for D&B, sell them back to them and recoup some of the cost of those. Darius, I'll start with you on this. This is the staging and event industry is one of the biggest, hardest hits in general. Not even talking about AV, just in general globally. This is a company that's doing something to at least help that, because that's obviously a big constituent for them and a big customer for them. When you guys are looking from a corporate standpoint, and Darius has been an executive at other corporations as well, when you look at instances like this and this current crisis, which is unlike anything we've ever seen, from a corporate level, and I'm not asking Polly specifically, but your experience as an executive, talk about some of the conversations you guys are able to have kind of internally, but also about ways to help your customers and your clientele through difficult times.
Yeah, absolutely. When you think of remanufacturing or reconditioning as kind of the cornerstone of the topic, this is about creativity, right? This is about us all coming together and putting I'll call it religious corporate beliefs aside, and not being dogmatic about our individual beliefs. And this is about success as an industry. And so we're all having to get extremely creative. Hardware as a service. I mean, you mentioned the person with the T-shirt that said, it'll fail, and then they signed a contract recently. We're all having to give up that religion. We are very much with the HAS offering that we've been talking about. That was one of the first things that we thought of is, wow, this is going to create, kind of a gap, and we're going to have to recycle in some way, shape, or form as an industry. And so what are we going to do about that? There's some creative ways to do it. We haven't announced those yet, but a lot of the partner community is really helping us kind of think through what does right look like, in the short term. And in the long term, I think the entire industry is going to have to kind of change some of its longstanding beliefs on what to do with product when it's reached a technical end of life, but is still relevant. What to do about something that's been deployed in an organization and needs to be redeployed. How do we do that in a way that's fair to all parties involved? So I think this is about creativity, and once again, I think it's about us coming together as an industry.
All right, Brock, in your previous life, you were a part of an organization that did a lot of live staging and events in and around not just Toronto but all over Canada. You looking at those folks that you had worked with in those industries. What other creative ways, because Darius is right, this is a really creative way to help out the staging and events area. What are some other areas that or ways that either you've seen or you've thought of in the last 2 or 3 months to help out that segment?
It's really tough. The venue business has very specific talents associated with it. People are running systems in buildings. Some of those skills are transferable, some of them are not. I'm really hoping to see a lot of live event technicians end up in the integration and customer support world. Live events people are the best problem solvers in the world because the band has to go on at 9 o'clock or nobody gets paid. And so everybody who grew up in that industry is fantastic at solving problems. Well, solving problems is pretty cross-disciplinary. They also tend to be very good customer service, customer-facing people. And I know you're smiling, sitting there smiling there, and you probably have this stereotype of long hair, tats, and a lot of piercings. The reality is that the live events business is very stressful, and they're dealing with talent and each other and visiting crews and unions, and most people who have flourished in that world, whether it's from the rock and roll side or to the crazy meeting lady, at the Hilton, you develop some really good skills. And so while the corporations are kind of focused right now on virtual events, and the venue people are engaged in a lot of religious activity because that may be the only thing that is going to save them. The live event staff themselves, I think, are going to be able to permeate out into other roles, and they may have to do that for a year or two.
Yeah, I was smirking and smiling because you're right about customer service because of the talent and egos that they have to manage on a nightly basis,
and the stressful conditions under which they operate.
Yeah,
right? Every meeting happens once. Every performance and production for a specific audience only happens once. And it's why, again, stereotypically, so many of them come across kind of gruff and a little removed, but it's a bit of a protective mechanism because they can't say what they think, and they have to keep the customer happy, and they have to solve the problem right now. And it's a bunch of good people, and this may be the first time in their lives that they're forced to look outside of the comfortable industry that they know. But if there are no buffalo on the prairie and you're a buffalo hunter, you got to start looking for rabbits or something else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that right there is a whole nother conversation of what happens at the end of this, when a good portion of that legacy talent pool has had to go elsewhere and into other industries. We very well could just lose a good chunk of that because they may not be back. So, Kelly, we'll let you wrap up here. What are other ways that not just manufacturers, but us, the industry, can help out with the staging and events folks?
I mean, I get a lot of people calling me just from being at NSCA and the Ignite program and trying to just help people in a workforce. But I mean, it's tough. And, I follow stuff on Reddit, and there was a gentleman on there, just as an example, who was looking to get into AV because he lost his job at one of the Cirque shows in Las Vegas, and he's like, I don't know what to do. Do you think this is a good option to go into the commercial side of things? And it was crazy because all of the comments on there were like, stay away, don't come into pro AV, blah, 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 and I sent him just a message, and I said, it's really not all that bad. I said, there's lots of opportunity. You can go this way, you can go that way. And then eventually ended up talking to him and connecting him with another organization in the industry. And so at least I mean, on a large scale, how can we all help? I mean, like Darius said and Brock, we have to get creative, on an individual level, just helping point people in the right direction, listen, give them an ear. I'm part of the Midwest Live production group on Facebook. So if there's any type of corporate event where they're looking to live stream, they need OBS help, any type of virtual event, I point it their way. But it makes me sad to think that, that we could potentially lose all of these people because they are awesome people. I mean, I've worked with them, in several capacities, and it just sucks because, like Brock said, they're the people that can think on their toes so quickly. And it could be a disaster behind the scenes, but it looks perfect to everyone else. So it would be a bummer to see everybody go. So I try and steer them back to the, the commercial side of stuff, the pro AV industries, to keep them. But I don't know. I'm not sure what we can all do as a whole.
Absolutely. And actually Kelly brought up a really good idea as well. There are a number of people who are doing virtual events, right? And yes, I'm certain that there are really great ways to DIY those virtual events. However, if it's an important event, you probably shouldn't leave it to yourself or DIY it. You should leave it to professionals who do it. And those are some of the best professionals who do it right now. Because number one, they have the expertise, like Brock said, they can troubleshoot, and they've got the ability to put on an actual show. So reach out to folks, reach out to Facebook groups like that. Reach out to various unions here in St. Louis. IBEW local is the home for a lot of those folks. So check out your local area and see where your staging and events folks live. So, all right, guys, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's important that as industries move towards virtual events, that the live event industry continues to own that production.
There's a lot to it. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I mean, we put on a couple and it's crazy hard.
Yeah, and so there's advertising and digital content people and marketing people that have think that they can do this now themselves without all the production folks, and it's just not the case. One of the things that live events people are extremely good at is planning and thinking through risk mitigation and preparing for when things go wrong. And of course, they do. So
they do.
I will just say I'm really glad that when we did a live stream and we hadn't quite hit play yet and I said the F word, I was really glad they were there to help me get rid of that and go over that. So it was good.
I'll take you and raise you. I had a button pop.
Oh,
I'm about to go on stage, and I had a button pop, and this woman walks up to me, and she just pushes me into the corner, wraps the thing around me, does something with like a paper clip, and then she's like, "Don't even think about it. Give me my paper clip when I'm done. When you're done." Like they
awesome.
they have this talent of like making I always say they're built for speed, not comfort. I mean, she literally just shoved me into the drapes, fixed the button, and then shoved me on stage and said, "Go do well and bring me my paperclip back." So, great.
And here's the thing, Darius, with that. She looked at you and she looked you up and down in 3 seconds, right? Right before you went out on stage and like, okay, there's something wrong. Let's go. Right? Yeah, absolutely. All right. I like that. That'll be a good way to end it. Brock, thank you, sir. How do people get a hold of you or Avitas?
I'm at brock@avitas.com. As you pointed out, it's AVITAAS. And I'm Brock McGinnis on Twitter, regular.
Yes, you are. Kelly Perkins, thank you, ma'am.
I am on Twitter, Kelly P. Perkins, LinkedIn, Kelly P. Perkins, and kellyp.perkins@gmail.com. P is for Patricia, if you guys were wondering.
That's my mother's middle name.
Well, there you go. I never knew that, actually. Darius, thank you, sir. Very nice to have you on. Again, nice to meet you this week, along with our buddy, Mr. Danto. So how do people connect with you or Polly?
So it's www.poly.com, and I'm Darius.Jones, 2 R's, at poly.com, Darius M. Jones at Twitter, and same thing for LinkedIn.
All right, very good. And we'll get Darius pulled into AV in the AM, just as almost as much as Mr. Danto is. I'm not sure if that's possible, but we'll try. So for me, for Tim Albright, don't follow me on the Twitters. I'm crossing my fingers that the Blues make it to the second round. That's all I'm doing right now. So, but go by the website if you would, please. AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. While you're there, please check out our underwriters section. These are the folks who support us and help you bring you AVWeek and ResiWeek and all the others. And also in about 2 or 3 weeks' time, we're going to be covering CEDIA Expo virtual, a little bit different than we covered InfoComm. We'll be doing some interviews, remote, obviously virtually, but folks are going to bring in their products into their space, and we're going to talk to them. We'll show it to you and talk about why it's important, how it's going to impact the home AV market. So check all that out and more at AVNation.tv. It's AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That is all the time we have for AV Week.